So carrying on with our basics of C#, the next thing we want to cover here is if statements. So an if statement is a condition, which means if something, do this or do that. And I'm going to give you an example of this right away so that makes sense. So I'm back in the first script. I'm just going to delete everything we did previously. So we don't need any of this. We don't need our method. And now to make a condition, you need something that you're going to compare. So I'm just going to make a Boolean variable here. I'm going to call it hasKey. I'm going to set this to false. So this is going to be like if we had a game where the player has to get a key to unlock a door, we need to check if he has that key or not. So I'm just going to do this in start. And the way we do this is we use what's called an if statement. So we just type if, and then we put open close brackets, and then our curly braces. So it's very similar to making a method, except we put if and just the brackets. The curly brackets work the same way as with methods, so everything inside these two brackets is part of this if statement. And now what we do is inside these parentheses, we put a condition we need to check. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to check if the player has the key. So we need to do hasKey. And then how I mentioned earlier that an equal sign is not actually meaning equals. It assigns things. So if we want to check if something is equal to something else, we use the comparison operator, which is two equal signs. So this is what actually says hasKey equals, and then we want to check what we want to make sure it equals. So in this case, we want to check if it's true. So now what's going to happen is this statement is going to run. It's going to say if hasKey equals true, run this code. And in this case, we'll do debug.log and we'll put player has the key. So right now the hasKey is false. So if we go into our game and run it, notice it says nothing at all. But if we change this, if we set hasKey equals true, and we go run the game, now we get the player has the key. Now something to note here is I'm going to show you some different ways we can compare things. So I'm going to change hasKey back to be false. So we have this comparison operator, which is checking if these two are equal. What we can also do is change the first one to be an exclamation point. And what this means is not equal. So let me just go back a second here and explain this a bit more. So what this comparison is doing is it's checking if this equals this, and then it returns either true or false. So just like a Bool variable. So everything in this condition is going to end up being true or false. And these conditions can get very complex over time. But when you boil it down to the core components, inside these brackets, it's either going to end up being true or false. So what's happening here is it's taken the value of hasKey, which right now if we think is false, so we could actually change this. Instead of saying hasKey, we can put in false because that's what it's assigned. So this is what the code is actually doing. It's saying if false equals true. And obviously that's not true, so it's not going to run. Now change this back to hasKey. So if we change this first one to an exclamation point, this is what's called the not equal operator. So what this is going to do is the reverse of equals. So it's going to say, is hasKey not equal to true? Which means hasKey has to be false. So if that's the case, this code is going to run. So even though it says player has the key and hasKey is false right now, if we go run this code, it's going to output the message that they have the key. So let's change this back. So now we have it. If the player has the key, it's going to output this. But what if we want to also output something if the player does not have the key? So right after the if statement, we can do what's called an else statement. And then we put our curly brackets here. Now what this does is just like the name. It's going to say if this is true, run this code. If it's not true, do this. So in this case, we could put debug.log, player does not have the key. Okay, so right now our hasKey is false. So if we run this code, it should say the player does not have the key, which it does. Okay, so that's the basics of an if statement. And I'm actually going to show you some different ways we can use these conditions here before we move on. So I'm actually going to change this. Let's delete this variable. I'm going to make a new integer. I'm just going to call it age, and I'm going to set it to 18. I'm going to delete these. Let's make a new if statement. And we want to check this age. So we could do if age equals 18. We could debug out. Player is 18. And now, just to show, even though we know that code should work fine, it's always great to test it just to make sure. Okay, so player is 18. And then we could do else. And then we could put debug.log, player is not 18. And now if we change this value to anything but 18, when we run our code, it should say player is not 18. Okay, which it does. But what if we want to start checking different ranges of the age? So here what we can do is we could say if player age is greater than 18. And then we can put here player is older than 18. And then the else statement would be a bit different here. In this case, it would be player is younger than 18. Okay, so we currently have it on 12, so let's make sure this runs. Okay, so player is younger than 18. And then if we set it to 19, now it's going to say player is older than 18. But if you look at this code, in this case, what's going to happen if we set this to 18? So now if we run this code, it's going to say the player is younger than 18 because it doesn't know how to check for an exact number. So to do this, there's a few things we could do here. So first thing, we could check if they're equal to 18 or older. So with this greater than operator, we can also add an equal sign. So what this will do is say if age is equal to 18 or greater. So we can say player is older or equal to 18. And then anything besides this is going to mean that they're younger than 18. Now we can also do, instead of the greater than operator, you can use the other arrow, and this is the less than operator. So this is going to say if age is equal or less than 18. And now something different I want to show you too here is where you can start adding multiple options. So now the first condition is going to say if age is equal to 18. Let's change this to be player is 18. And then if they're not, it's going to say they're younger than 18. So now the first condition is going to check if age is equal to 18. It'll display out that they're 18. And then if they're not 18, it's going to say currently player is younger than 18. But that's not the case because this could be if they're older than 18 as well. This is only checking if it's equal to 18. So what we can do is after this else, we can add another if, and this is called an else if. So what this is going to do is it's going to check this condition first. If it's true, it'll do this and ignore everything after it. But if this is false, it's going to move down to the next one where it's going to say else, and then it hits an if again. So now we can do if age is less than 18. And now this code is going to run saying the player is younger than 18. So let's do this. Let's set it to 17. Let's go run this code. Okay, so it says player is younger than 18. Now what if we have it set to 20? What we could do here is we have two options. We could do an else. And then we can just debug.log and we can say player is older than 18. Now in this case, this is going to work because we checked if the player's age is equal to 18. Then this happens if they're younger than 18. And then there's only one other option. At this point, if these two fail, that means they're over 18. But we could be very explicit here too. We could actually say if age is greater than 18. So that is an option here too, but in this case, else would work fine. So now we have our age set to 20. If we go and run this, it says they're older than 18. So these are the most common features of using if, else, and else if statements. And these are one of the core parts of programming and making games. So you're going to get used to using these very quickly, and you're going to learn a lot of little tricks that you can do with them. Because everything that happens in your game basically needs an if statement to know what to do if that happens. Okay, so we now know how to make an if statement. In this video, I'm giving you another assignment to create some if statements on your own. So what I want you to do here is to make an integer called health and give it a value that you want. And now in start, do a check. If health is 100 or above, you want to display full health on the screen. If health is above 25, but it's still lower than 100, you want to display partial health. And then for any other value, you want to display low health. So give that a try. It's very similar to the example I just showed you. And if you need to use that video as a reference, go ahead. There's no reason you can't go back to watch a video. This isn't a test. This is just used for you to practice and learn from. So if you need to Google for help or use other videos as reference, that's completely fine. Don't feel like you're cheating yourself. That's a good example to get in the habit of doing, because when you're making a game on your own, you need to research and look up how to do things on your own. So by all means, use any resources you need to help you with these assignments. So give that a go, and if you have any trouble, I'm going to show you how to do it right away in the next video. I hope you were able to get that working on your own, but if you had any trouble, don't worry about that at all. I'm going to show you how to do it right here. So I'm just going to delete what I previously had in my script here. Okay, and to get started, I'm going to make an integer variable called health. I'm just going to set mine to 99. Okay, so in start, first thing I want to do here is I'm going to check if health. I want to check if it's greater or equal to 100. So this way, if anything goes wrong with our code and it does go over 100, this is going to catch it as well. So I'm going to debug out full health. Okay, and then the next check I want to do, so it's going to be an else if. Now I want to check if health is greater than 25. So remember in the assignment I said if it's greater than 25 or less than 100, we want to output partial health. And now if it was equal to 100, this statement would be true, so this one would never run. So we know if we just say if health is over 25, it's automatically going to be under 100 at this point. So then we can just debug.log and we can say partial health. Okay, and then the very last thing is any other case. We just want to debug out low health. So any other case will be caught by this else statement and will display low health. So right now we have it set to 99. So it should display partial health. So let's go test this out. And now when you're testing code, you want to do a test for every condition that you can find, and as many as you can. That's how you find a lot of bugs. So in this case, we got partial health, which is what we wanted. So now let's set it to 100. We should get full health. Okay, which we do. And let's set it to something over 100. So let's do 105. Okay, so we got full health again. So we tested all those conditions. And now we need something outside of that range, so under 25. So let's do 22. Okay, so we got low health. And we haven't talked about this, but even if we did give it a negative number, because that's still outside of these range, this else is going to catch it. So it's going to say low health. Okay, so it still says low health. So technically we could add another condition here where if it's below 0 or equal to 0, that means the player died. Okay, so there's the solution, and I will see you in the next video.